Welcome to the 2021 Ways and Means budget hearings. Today is Thursday, June 24th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Roll call the members of the Ways and Means Subcommittee. Councilor Janino.
Here.
Here. Councilor McKenna.
Here.
Here. Councilor Powers. Absent. Councilor Sereno.
Here.
Here. Council President Zambuto.
Here.
Here. And Chairman Visconti.
Here.
Here. Quorum is present.
Thank you. Today is the final day of the 5-day budget hearings, listening to the department heads. I'm sure the committee is excited that today is the final day of that. And then we will be deliberating on Monday prior to the council meeting. I'd like to start off with the mayor's department. So, Mr. Mayor, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
That's page, section 2, page 3. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. On a high level, I guess I'll talk about some of the changes that are in our budget. Two big changes are a reserve for contract negotiations that we've included in this year's budget at $700,000. I believe the chief financial officer has chatted a little bit about that already, but the idea behind that is for us to have a reserve pot of money available when we do negotiate contracts, and we expect to start getting those done hopefully before the next couple of weeks. So as we move into 22, we know that we'll start dipping into that fund to pay for some of the raises that will be coming down the pike. The other piece that you'll find that's a little bit different is our contracted services line. Historically, if you look back in 18 and 19, we had 100,000 and 70,000. We've included this year a line item for communications contracts, and that includes some of the translation that we've been doing, and that includes some of the communication consulting that we've had as well. And a lot of that prior to this budget was being paid for, especially during COVID. We were paying for that money, those services through different pots of money, including the CARES Act. And so we included that in this budget because of the value that it's brought. And some of the things that we've learned through COVID and through our response to COVID, we wanted to bake into our operation. Translation is definitely one of those pieces that we want to make sure that we're doing a good job of translation for all of the things that are coming out of the city, all of the meetings that are being translated, all of the pieces of information that are getting out to the public, that they get out in the right language. And including, as I said, the consulting around communications and making sure that that our work is being amplified to the level that we've seen over the last year and a half. So those are the two big pieces. Our salary line is level funded, all the same positions, no new positions, no additional bumps in pay, and that's everything else is pretty flat.
Yes, I can open it up to the councilors. Any councilors have any questions? No? Okay. There's really not much to ask here, to be honest with you. More on an just an informed basis. It hasn't changed, but the Mayor Municipal, what is, do you mind? I have no idea what the line item
Yeah,
is.
so we are part of the Mass Municipal Association's, we're a member of the Mass Municipal Association, and this is a fee that goes along with that, that we've been part of, and I believe that's all that's included in that line item.
Okay. Counselor, any questions? No? If you want to, I have no questions on your department. If you want to continue on to the human rights?
Yeah.
If you don't
So I would like to, I will present the Human Rights Commission. We did include a budget this year, and that budget includes
Page 76.
so you need a page. It's
Page 76 and 77.
76, 77, right.
Sorry.
So as you all know, the Human Rights Commission has been re-established. They are doing some great work. As part of the work that they're doing, as I think you all know, we had gone back and forth about the executive director role and what that looked like. As we move through the process of creating a racial equity municipal action plan, we were one of 6 communities that were chosen to go through a process of coming up with a racial equity municipal action plan. And really the idea behind that is that the things that we do here in the city be looked at through the lens of racial equity. Being part of that process, it's pretty clear that the city would stand to improve with a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as I thought about that position, I said, well, we can roll in some of the responsibilities of the executive director of the Human Rights Commission, but ultimately, this person would be responsible for our work around equity and inclusion in the city, and to have a director level position made sense. So we put that in the Human Rights Commission budget. As you know, the members of the commission are unpaid. The one thing that we did include was a line for office supplies. They do need things like letterhead and some basic office supplies to be able to operate as they continue to grow and kind of fulfill their mission as a commission. So I know I've spoken to everyone, I think, about the Director of Equity and Inclusion. If folks have any questions, I'm happy to entertain those. We are working on a job description. I'll be happy to share that with the council when it's prepared, but we don't want to have anything quite done yet. It's still in draft form because it's still a position that we know may not get funded, so it's being worked on. So,
Councilor McKenna.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, when are you going to, if you get funded, do you know, offhand when you're going to hire this person?
So I would like to, if the position's funded in this year's budget, we'll have that job description ready to go. I do want some input from the Human Rights Commission about that job description. I do want input from the council about that job description. So I expect that there'll be a little bit of time before we post it. But I'd like to probably get that posted in the middle of July if we could, and then start a process to try to find somebody. Ideally, we'd have somebody in as soon as possible for that position. I will say, when we posted the executive director job, which was an unpaid job, and that's by city ordinance, we did not get a lot of interest in that. And I'm hopeful that having a director level position with the job description that we'll share with you, that we do get a level of interest that is a little different than what we had with the executive director. And, if we have that kind of interest, we'll have a robust process for interview as we do with every position. And we'll get that person in and get them ready to go and have them doing some of the good work that we know needs to be done in the city. Thanks.
Council President Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You say you'd like some input from the council, Mr. Mayor. I'm hoping there'll be some flexibility in the name of the title.
What would you like the
Well, I'm not
name
going
of the title to
to
be?
disclose that now, but
Okay.
I'd like to discuss it further. A little uncomfortable with it. But I agree the position's needed, and I'm with you 100% on that. But I'd like to think.
We're always willing to,
I know you
listen and have have a dialogue, and happy to have that conversation.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
No, but obviously, we've talked on this earlier, and the position is certainly needed. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Just a quick question. Do you
Yeah.
foresee you having no luck with the executive director's position? Will this, I know it's part of the ordinance, but do you think it's going to take the place of the executive director? Do we need an executive director with
No, so the idea would be that role would be filled by this
Okay.
person, right? So, and ideally what will happen is that we'll have somebody come on board. We still have to do we have to take a look at the ordinances that govern the Human Rights Commission. I know the commission's done that a little bit, but it'll be really helpful to have some staff dive into that. One of the things that we are looking for, I know in the description where we've got a preference for somebody with a law degree, which would be really helpful. And having them do a deep dive of the ordinance and then come up with some proposed changes and having the council look at those changes. We may get rid of the executive director and call it we may change that to the director of diversity or director or whatever we want to call it. But the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion could be baked into the city ordinances, right? And so we'll have to look at that and change it. But the idea is that those roles that the ED would be doing, which a lot of them were really staffing the Human Rights Commission, that would be folded into this position.
Great. Well, any other questions, any further questions? If there are none,
right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Appreciate it.
If my other department heads don't mind, I'd like to just go out of order and move Parks and Recs up. Michael called me earlier asking, had an appointment this evening that he couldn't get out of. So if everybody else doesn't mind, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Michael? That is page 8081, section 2.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Michael.
My budget is relatively level funded this year. We have a couple of increases, $25,000 in our appropriated account from $75,000 to $100,000 for additional programming and activities, and equipment and supplies has gone from 22 to 30. So you guys just received a handout with our projection for what our programs and activities look like in 2022. So hence the increase. As you can see, there's almost 200 programs on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can open it up to questions if any of the councilors have any questions for Michael. Council McKenna.
Thank you. I just want to, I don't have any questions. I just want to say that you're doing a wonderful job. And, you know, the children of Revere are very lucky to have you running their programs. So I just would like to say thank you.
Thank you very much. Very kind of you.
Council President Zambudo.
It wouldn't be a night of budget deliberations if I didn't throw some bouquets. So I think you know I hold you in the highest esteem, and you have done a wonderful job since you were appointed a long time ago. And you've really transformed this Parks and Rec and to one we can be proud of. And maybe someday we'll have a big building and all the other good things that go along with it. But I just want to commend you for the job you do, and I, for one, am thrilled that you're still in this position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, 2022 is going to be a big year. It's not all here at this second in time, but I think 2022 will be a huge year for us. So you'll see a lot of big things. And, you know, as I take some of these accolades, you know, I have a wonderful staff, right? They work hard every day. So thank you.
Yeah, and I know you have a great staff, and they do work hard, and I don't want to leave them out.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to say, has anybody got the immediate release that every flower shop in Revere is out of flowers, you know, with all the bouquets? But no, with that being said, I have a couple of questions just for some clarity.
Yep.
We look at it, a portion of the salaries are paid from other sources, and I always look at that first, only because it doesn't hit the city's bottom line. So where are those salaries being paid out of?
They'll be paid out of my revolving account.
Okay, and that's both of them, correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Yeah, we have 50% of one of our employees paid out of there, and we have 100% of another clerical position. So one sport program coordinator and a clerical position.
And I guess the one line item that seemed to, that I looked at and seemed to stick out was you requested in the payroll side section $994,000 for fiscal year 2022. It was decreased by $380,000. Does that?
Yeah, that was,
it's just a big number. I don't know.
Yeah, as we mentioned during the capital, we are in the process of trying to secure some larger recreational facilities, and Michael, in anticipation of that, had put some budgeted personnel in there, but it was a little premature because we were still in the process. So until we had it finalized and hopefully everything shakes out well, we deferred that. And again, we're trying to use as many of the ARPA dollars and alternative funding sources to fund that. So didn't want to tie up too many budget dollars with something that wasn't complete yet.
Okay, and the final question I have is, Michael, you requested I think it was about 30,000 in overtime, but was reduced to 15. And then when I look at your year-to-date fiscal year 2021 quarter 3, you've almost used up the $15,000 already. And it was a COVID year. I'm wondering the reason for the reduction, and which is great, but is the 15,000 gonna suffice? Does that make Rich? Michael?
Yeah. My staff is pretty, you know, we have a bunch of activity coordinators on there. We do the best we can from a flex schedule. You know, most of our events, as you can see, are nights and weekends. I mean, that's when people need us the most. So we do a great job of, you know, working Tuesday through Saturday or Sunday through Wednesday, or, you know, however it happens to shake out. But with the many programs and activities, it just, you know, nights and weekends and eventually have to pay them overtime. So that's what the increase was. You know, the plan for 2022 was to increase programs and activities and by a lot. The reason that we're a little bit over this year is that we've also taken on the field maintenance portion of some of the city work. So my staff has taken on the infields of all of the city fields. So you know, St. Mary's has 6 games on the weekends, you know, where they're prepping them every Saturday and Sunday. So some of that has, you know, trickled over into the overtime. So that's what the increase was for, and we'll figure out one way or the other.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, I appreciate it, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, guys.
Moving right along, we can start with the public health initiative, page 62 and 63. Lauren, welcome.
Hi.
Hi, Lauren.
So I'm very new to this. So I'm going to briefly run through the mission statement, accomplishments for fiscal year 2021, and the goals and objectives for fiscal year 2022. Just very quickly, our mission statement is to protect the health, safety, and well-being of the city's residents, workforce, and visitors. We hope to promote health equity, prevent illness, promote healthy behavior, and enforce state laws and regulations. In fiscal year 2021, I think obviously the biggest thing is COVID. So we spearheaded the citywide effort to combat COVID by leading emergency response efforts, coordinating COVID testing operations, which included contracting with private ambulance services and collaborating with state efforts to bring Stop the Spread testing locations to our area that continue through this year. Initiating contact tracing efforts in a combined effort with the school nurses and the city staff. And we also hired and trained a multilingual contact tracer from Revere to increase effectiveness in the middle of February. Obviously, we also led the effort to administer COVID vaccines. So we established our clinics at Rumney. We administered up to date, over 9,000 doses of the vaccine. We also brought in some community organizations to help us further the vaccination efforts. So we worked with East Boston, CHA, MGH, FEMA, Cataldo Ambulance. We obviously set up the high throughput clinic at Wonderland, but we also brought the vaccination to homebound residents. So we were able to get into about 170. Well, we were able to reach about 170 residents with that effort. We went to Revere Housing Authority and worked really well with them to bring mobile clinics to multiple locations there. Faith leaders, we brought multiple mobile clinics to places of worship. And finally, with Dr. Kelly to bring vaccines to Revere Public Schools. We also continued to work on our flu clinics. We increased the number of flu clinics that we did as a city. We hosted 4, 3 were targeted at the vulnerable pediatric population. And I wasn't here last year, but I believe we greatly increased the number of flu vaccines we've given out. We worked really well with the North Suffolk Public Health Collaborative, which is our neighboring towns of Winthrop and Chelsea. And so we worked really well with them in the effort to bring COVID vaccines to our first responders, and then have continued to work with them. We meet regularly to talk about COVID, but also future projects, including a really exciting potential for an epidemiologist for the 3 of our communities. And then we really tried to also implement regular health education outreach. We, through multiple appearances on Revere TV, city-run social media, teletown halls, we worked with Elder Affairs to talk to seniors, worked with Revere TV to do public health-focused TV spots, and we also worked with a lot of different departments to bring teletown halls to educate childcare providers, restaurant owners, and landlords. And finally, we worked again with Dr. Kelly to bring COVID vaccine education to the students and families of Revere Public Schools. And for fiscal year '22, obviously, we want to continue. Our work is not ended in the COVID pandemic, so we are going to continue our vaccination efforts. We have a great goal of herd immunity of 70%. Hopefully, we reach that soon. We're working on a memorial for residents who have been lost to the pandemic over the last 15 months. We're going to continue to educate about risks and benefits and public health safety measures, and we're going to continue contact tracing efforts. We also hope to continue to expand our other vaccination programs. Hopefully, we added a freezer capability. We also want to explore working with the school department for other childhood immunizations. We'll strengthen relationships with neighboring communities to work on social determinants of health and chronic disease management, which includes continuing a lot of the current work that has already been done in behavioral health, housing, and economic security, continuing the work that's been done on air quality, and again, looking forward to working on bringing an epidemiologist and a shared public health nurse to our communities, and also really try to focus a little bit on youth mental health programming. We all know that's a big need after this last year. We are also going to hopefully continue to work on the emergency operations plan, bring it up to speed with what needs to be added in throughout the COVID according to federal regulations. And then finally, hopefully update our regulations to reflect some current ordinances, and implement some easily accessible application process for licensing, and try to get a little bit of organization for all of the regulations that we hope to implement. Thank you.
I can open it up to councilors for questions. Councilor Janino?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lauren, can I just ask, when did you officially start with the city? What was your hire date?
End of October.
Okay, so let's just talk about the fact that you literally had November, December, January, February. You had 4 months in a new role, and we're faced with probably one of the biggest public health crises we've seen in this century. So I just want to say it's really impressive that you accomplished all the other things that you mentioned when you presented your budget, aside from what's been the biggest part of your job, and that's dealing with this pandemic, and you've done it well. So I'm really proud of what you've accomplished.
Thank
The city's proud of what you've accomplished. I mean, that's really, really impressive. I've been in a new job for 6 months, and I'm still overwhelmed. So the fact that you've been in that for 4 months, and we're thrown one of the biggest curveball anyone in your profession has ever seen.
Thank you.
You handled it well, and we were a hard-hit community. So thank you for what you've done. It's really impressive, and it speaks a lot to what you've accomplished for the city, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Council President Zambudo.
Are there any flowers left? I mean, so, to say you've done a great job would be an understatement. Everybody knows what you've done. And my colleague just mentioned under the worst circumstances ever in the history of the country. So there's not much more to say than that, except that we're grateful for you and for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Which leaves myself. It looks like if there was somebody that was thrown to the wolves, it was you. And I want to commend you and thank you for guiding the city through this pandemic. What else is there to say? But, you're a valued asset to this community. And I appreciate you took the role. And I'm sure you didn't expect what the role entailed. And but you're here, and we're past.
Hopefully.
We're over the hump, as they say. So I'm glad you're still here.
Thanks.
In terms of your budget, it's pretty straightforward. There was. It looks like there's one clerk position that's been added.
Yeah, that's, I'll throw a bouquet over my shoulder here to Lauren, because not only is she tasked with doing all the public health work, but she was thrown into multiple grants that were thrown her way to manage this pandemic. And through that process, it was obvious that the administrative staff was a bit overwhelmed. So using some of these ARPA funds that we are looking to give her some additional support in her administrative positions.
Other than that, I have no further questions. It's pretty straightforward and no significant changes. So just thank you again for coming, and
Thanks.
thank you for taking on that position.
Thank you. Very, very happy to be here, so thank you.
Okay, moving right along, it looks like we'll look at the substance abuse, Division 66 and 67 pages. Welcome. Welcome.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll do the same thing as Lauren. I'll just briefly run through our mission statement. Is to serve as a resource that enhances the municipality's capacity to successfully identify complex public health issues that disproportionately affect the most vulnerable among us. And going over our FY21 accomplishments, we did accomplish a lot this year. With COVID, we piloted an emergency housing and homeless response program, which was a joint effort with the Department of Veterans Office to prevent widespread transmission of COVID among those experiencing unsheltered homelessness. We partnered with Health Innovations, which is a community-based organization that provides health and social services to vulnerable populations. They're now stationed out of the SET office 2 days a week from 10 to 5, which is great. They're a huge asset to our community. We assisted policymakers in drafting legislation that increases access to medication-assisted recovery, which I believe some of you council members were here when you gave that your support about a month and a half ago. We led a mental health subcommittee under COVID Reviews Response Network and coordinated public health forums and roundtables comprised of local providers and subject matter expertise. And we held our first annual Riviera Beach Memorial to commemorate those who've lost their lives to drug overdose, which turned out to be a big success. So we were happy we were still able to do that. As far as our priorities for FY22, we hope to expand access to harm reduction services by through DPH by designating funding for a syringe service program, which the Board of Health unanimously approved last month. We also hope to create the infrastructure to collect and monitor drug-related data through an application program interface that's utilized by all sectors within our community that are collecting drug-related data. We'd like to launch a stigma campaign, which really talks about the importance of language and hopefully having a policy and operational plan that reflects recovery-oriented language within the city. We'd like to conduct a regional homelessness, and this is going to be a very big strategy, a regional homelessness assessment, which will conclude in a robust report that contains quantitative and qualitative data on the magnitude of the problem. We know we have a problem, but the severity of the problem is still unknown. We never really looked at the homelessness problem in such depth. We would also like to, with the recommendations from that report, we'd like to present a comprehensive homelessness strategy that includes all stakeholders in all sectors, both public and private and nonprofit. We'd like to dedicate an outdoor space to families who've lost a loved one to overdose, which we plan to do on Overdose Awareness Day. And lastly, conduct a feasibility study on recovery-friendly businesses in the community. So, that's it.
Thank you. Any questions? Council McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you just tell me, do you have a number of homeless people, an estimate of how many people are homeless in Revere?
The numbers change daily because it's such a transient population, and I will tell you that they've shut down parts of Mass Ave, which there was a large homeless population down there, so now they're coming into the city, and part of that is because we have so many T stations, right? And we also border so many other communities. So it's really a place where people will go during the day and oftentimes don't even stay here at night, but then go back to the shelters in Cambridge and Boston. But on average, the people who are here regularly are regulars, I guess you'll call them. We have between 25 and 30 at a time that are living in encampments actively.
So I just have a question, because I don't know, because we've had a couple of homeless people that have taken shelter in the Beachmont field and down on Leverett Ave. I'm wondering if a number of homeless people come into a public owned place, can they stay there? Can they make an encampment and stay there?
If it is public land, by law, they're able to if they don't have another place to go. If you don't give them an actual place to go, then they don't have to be removed. Oftentimes, they will get removed through, police, and then they'll just pop up in another spot. So really, we need to come up with a long-term solution rather than trying to displace them in different parts of the location. And one thing to note about that is when they do move, we often lose sight of them. We don't know where they are, so we're not able to continue to engage to kind of help them get to that next stage of change, whatever that stage of change may be for them. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your department is another department that I don't think people realize how much the pandemic impacted. We know it impacted every department in the city, but this is another one where, you touched briefly upon the homeless population and how, you were working to make sure COVID didn't spread that way. But I think something that people don't talk about are the addiction rates and things that people were dealing with during this pandemic. People were home. They were stuck with spouses in difficult relationships. There were children that were involved, and I think a lot of people that may have been in recovery for long periods of time would relapse because of these stressful situations like a pandemic, like your children being home, like losing your job. And I think that, the services that you guys provided to our residents during that time when all of these things were spiking in the whole state, not just Revere, not even just Massachusetts, the whole country. I think that that's one area of this pandemic that we kind of publicly lost sight of when we were so focused on the virus, we didn't see what else the virus was attacking.
Absolutely.
And I think that you guys have done a really good job to give resources to our residents, whether it be, stuck home in a difficult situation or dealing with relapse or addiction or whatever the different issues are. And I really commend you guys for that.
Thank you very much. And the long-term implications of that are still to be determined, really, because it's, the overdose rates in the country are the worst that they've ever been. And we have definitely lost sight of that because of the pandemic, but it's all interrelated one way or another.
It's fair to say that the homeless initiative has been added to your department, correct me if I'm wrong?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, great. And, in terms of the numbers and salaries, and it's pretty much grant funded, I would take, because it's on other sources. And the only other position that was added was a social worker, which I'm sure is quite needed in your department. So if any other counselors have any questions, Counsel Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No real questions, just you obviously have a difficult job, and the stress of just trying to help people, I know very well, and so just keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
you,
you.
councilors.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Now, moving forward, it's community engagement, page 64 and 65. Ms. Rana?
Good evening, councilors.
Good evening.
So I'll also walk through my department and our mission statement and accomplishments. I would like to also share that we've finalized the name of the department, which is Community Health and Engagement. And our mission statement is to increase opportunities for active living and healthy eating through community engagement and leadership development to promote civic engagement to address social determinants of health through policy systems and environmental changes. We've had a lot of accomplishments over the last fiscal year. The ones highlighted here include the facilitation and implementation of all of the COVID emergency food programs, which included pop-ups, meals from an international organization, Off Their Plate and World Central Kitchen, And then also the relocation of the First Congregational Church's food pantry, which is currently at 200 Winthrop Ave, grab-and-go meals and a lot more. And so as of the end of April 30th, we have served 116,657 food bags, boxes, and meals since the beginning of the pandemic on March 18th. Well, a few weeks into it. In addition, we've also coordinated the COVID ambassador program, which includes a youth component, and this has been replicated by the state, including other cities and towns around the Commonwealth. And these ambassadors are resident leaders here in the city who are multilingual, multicultural residents, and have been a core part of assisting the city with communication and outreach during the pandemic, and continue to do so right now with vaccination efforts in conjunction with others in Health and Human Services. We've also launched and facilitated the Revere COVID-19 Community Response Network, and this network continues to meet. We were meeting 5 days a week during the height of the pandemic last spring, and we are continuing to meet right now every other Monday. And this is a network of over 200 stakeholders, which include City of Revere staff, members of the Revere Public School, community organizations, faith leaders, business owners, childcare providers, and residents who've been organizing and leading efforts around wellness and outreach in the city, especially with our most vulnerable populations. And we have been divided into several subgroups, which are listed in the accomplishments, and include all the way from wellness and neighbor checks to also mental health and trauma, communications, and then also language-specific and cultural-specific networks as well, including the Espanol Network and the Brazilian Network. Earlier last year, we thank you for also passing the food truck and peddling ordinance, which we just launched just on Monday, and so now food trucks can apply for a license through the License Commission, and there's a scheduling system through the License Commission as well for food trucks to operate around the city, which we're really excited for. We also had a very big systems change here in the city, where all of our city materials are now being translated in the 4 major languages spoken in the city, which include English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic. And lastly, this last year was our 2nd year implementing the YouthWorks grant. This coming fiscal year will be our 3rd. Last year, we were able to employ over 70 youth with workforce development, quality placements, virtual jobs last year, which was a huge change. This summer, we're going to have a combination of in-person and virtual jobs, and we were able to place 98 youth this summer. Going into fiscal '22, we have 3 big goals and objectives, which include the implementation of Grow and Revere, a Revere food hub. This is going to really strengthen the work around the food economy that has been in development over the last several years, and also provide a location for residents to access for workforce development opportunities and a shared kitchen use space. In addition, a second goal is to implement urban farming initiatives and continue this. And again, thank you for Monday night and helping to pass one of the most progressive urban farming ordinances in the state. And so we will work with the public health director and inspectional services in developing the permitting processes for items included in that ordinance. And then lastly, we're going to continue to implement and strengthen our community engagement practices, and especially through the COVID Ambassador Program, and continue to develop resident and led leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the subcommittee? Council McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say thank you for everything you've done during COVID and what you've brought to the table for Revere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it looks like this salary section seems to be level funded, other than an added social worker. Correct me if I'm wrong?
Just to be clear on the social worker, that's one position that's spread out throughout all the Health and Human Services
Oh,
departments.
okay.
So that's why you're seeing just the 13,000. So we spread it out between the whole 500 series
So
of the
that's
Health
one
and
person.
Yeah, so it's one person that'll lend
That's-
social worker support to the Health and Human Services Division.
Okay, great. And other than that, there's really nothing to discuss in terms of numbers-wise, but I want to also extend my thank you for, what you did during COVID and what the ambassadors did. If I remember during the height of COVID, it was, I had a client in my office, which is right on Sprague Street, and when they left, they went up the street and they called me back and goes, "What is that long line, okay, across from the baseball field?" And I said, "That's the food pantry." And it was, without the work that you guys did, it was pretty impressive. And I know it was a lot of work with all those pop-ups, so I want to thank you for doing what you guys did for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, councilors.
Thank you.
I guess moving right along, Elder Affairs is next. Mr. Giulio. That is page 68 and 69.
Good evening, councilors. Mr. Chairman,
Thank you. Good
everybody
evening.
comfortable, ready?
Yes.
Little hungry? Okay. Revere Elder Affairs activities were severely curtailed during COVID-19, the restrictions, pandemic. But during that period, Elder Affairs focused much of its time and resources supporting activities to ensure the welfare of our senior population, participating in food pantries, well-being checks, and the COVID vaccine appointments. Although the pandemic consumed much of our time and energy during this period, Elder Affairs made the best use of the shutdown period by acquiring personnel for key planning, outreach, and facilities support functions, making major renovations and ensuring that we would be in the best position possible to welcome our senior population back to the Rossetti Cowan Center when we were able to open. So to detail the accomplishments for FY21, we renovated, as you know, completely pretty much the building. The first floor walls were repainted. We had put in new drapes, hung prints. The exterior doors were replaced. We repurposed approximately 30% of the second floor space to create offices for consumer affairs and the Board of Health departments, created small conference rooms, divided the large craft rooms into 2 smaller craft rooms, so that would make it more efficient for space, so there could be multiple activities happening at different times. And, we cleaned up, repaired, repainted the bocce room, the activities room, and the kitchen. So, we could also went ahead with the vans. We took care of the routine maintenance. We detailed, and as you notice, new lettering on the vans. We supported city COVID vaccine outreach to Revere seniors, created the call center, obtained volunteers, and managed call center activities daily to provide seniors and the rest of Revere help registering for vaccines. Participated and provided support for food pantry activities during COVID, maintained ongoing communications and support for city seniors during that period we were closed. We expanded senior communication and coordination with community groups to broaden awareness of senior activities and support. We went on Revere TV to develop and produce programs for Revere seniors, including Senior FYI, craft shows, cooking shows. We put the exercise yoga programs on daily, so when the seniors couldn't come in and do these programs, they could watch them on TV. I don't really need to go on anymore with what we did, you know. I just want you to know that we tried our best to help the seniors during this period, and we want to continue to do it. The one thing I will say, our biggest goal for FY22 is to ensure that the Senior Center membership and activities are representative and responsive to Revere's needs. So we want to really increase cultural diversity in the Senior Center membership and increase cultural diversity among the members of the Elder Council. And we really are making plans on doing this with our events and our activities.
Any questions from the council? No? No? Council McKenna?
Thank you, sorry.
No worries.
Debbie, your senior center caretaker, could you just explain what that is?
So the caretaker, I believe, is also the van driver. We don't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we don't have just a caretaker. The full-time van driver is also a caretaker at this point.
Okay. Councilor President Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I threw quite a few bouquets at her the other night when she was appointed, but you're doing a terrific job down there, and I hear it from the seniors all the time, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Councilor.
Deb, if I may, just a quick question. It looks as though the full-time employees have dropped, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, and the part-time, you've added a couple of part-timers, is that correct? Rich?
Yeah, there was a bit of a reorganization. Debbie had created an assistant director position, which she's hired, and two of the clerical positions we've paid. We have one here. It's actually, I just found a little error. We typically don't put our part-time clerical positions in the main budget because they don't count as FTEs. But we are with the assistant director. We're going to drop the full-time clerk down to a part-time clerk. And then the other, the employees there, one of the coordinators of the volunteer coordinator and the van drivers are all paid through other financing sources. Elder Affairs actually has 3 revolving funds, you might recall, that you ordained last week, and we have one for senior center activities, senior center transportation, and senior center food services. So the revenues that come in through those services are able to offset some of the part-time salaries of those positions. But yeah, this is one of the budgets that we're actually able to lower the FTE count with some reorganization.
Great. That's it. Thank you, Deb, and
Thank you.
keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next is the Veteran Affairs, page 70 and 71. No? Okay.
Sorry. Mark is not in today, so I'm going to present his program for him.
Okay.
I probably won't do it as just as Mark, but I will do my best. So the mission of Veterans Affairs is to provide services and benefits to eligible veterans and their families in a timely manner in compliance with Massachusetts general law, and further represent and advocate for veterans and family members with U.S. government and private agencies, veteran services organizations, and the public to maximize utilization of available resources. And the veterans, through their accomplishments in 2021, have been remarkable, and I was witness to a number of them, but I will go down the numbers piece of it. They administered over $500,000 in Chapter 115, which is the state assistant process for veterans, providing financial aid, shelter, housing, clothing, and medical care. They expanded their food distribution and served 450 households, which was an increase of 100 veteran families during the pandemic. They held their first virtual memorial on Veterans Day ceremony, giving the veterans of the community their ability to take part in the event. And as of March 18th, the annual amount of federal benefits paid to Revere veterans or their widows now total $1.7 million. And it's important to note that, they've worked really hard at transferring the Chapter 115 benefit eligible into the federal benefits, which makes a smoother process, and it's a real highlight, and it's an attribute to the work that Mark and his team does. They filed 143 VA claims. They continue to work with the veterans' residents through Revere Housing. They renovated the Veterans Office to bring the space up to the 21st century. Very, very proud of that accomplishment. And as Julia already noted from the SUDI department, the veterans and Mark and his team worked very, very closely during the pandemic with our homeless population, and they were instrumental in really supporting the encampments that, we had to put up in order to provide services to the homeless population and really access to food, to shelter, to clothing, to testing, and to vaccinations. They worked really hard at, at times housing different homeless folks in the Roadway Inn when the weather became instrumental, and inclement weather really caused, a challenge for people to be out there. The goals of the VA, the Veterans Affairs during their fiscal year 22 will be to continue to build the homeless piece, because what we've realized is this isn't a singular department operation, and we're going to work really hard at trying to establish and work with best practice on this, because we know that the homeless population in the city of Revere has increased tremendously. And it could be attributed to the pandemic, but the reality is that that we have to do something to support this process along. So more of the goals will be to continue to expand the veteran and the family outreach, to work collaboratively with all the veterans groups throughout the state, to continue to build strong relationships within the Department of Health and Human Services. As I think all of you can see, that we're building a Health and Human Service division within the city, and we're really trying to work, with all of the, what are they called, Rich? The 50, what's the number? The 500 series? Is that what you call it? But it's really, really important that all of these departments work really closely together, because they're working with our most vulnerable population, and it's really, really necessary. So I hope I can answer any questions, and if I can't, I'm sure Rich can.
Council Sereno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, through you to Kim. In place of Mark, I just want to give kudos to Mark, because over the course of the pandemic, we communicate often as the chair of the Veterans Subcommittee. And, all through the office renovations, he was so very proud that once the pandemic was over, we're going to have kind of a welcoming space for our community's veterans in that office space. So between that and his work with the homeless population, and I wanted to speak about that as well. And I'm glad you brought it up, Kim, because unfortunately it's a topic that a lot of residents and a lot of people don't want to talk about or acknowledge, but the homelessness population in our city is growing. And sadly, I get sad when I receive emails from residents who are complaining about the homeless people and the panhandlers, and it's a sad situation that we as city leaders need to acknowledge and address and make sure that there are resources available to help these people. So I just want to commend the administration on that as well.
I promise.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Zambudo. Council
I know
President.
you're afraid to
Council
call him.
President.
Council Zambudo, I promise to send him the bouquet.
I'll give Mark a bouquet when he gets back. But to follow up on my colleague, the homeless situation, I just came from Everett on a business trip they've got the same thing. You know, we're all municipalities are going through this, and we're not unique here. But again, I commend the administration for its efforts, and we're all willing to work together on that, and we just don't sweep our homeless under the rug. And just hearing it is a disinfectant, and it will make other people that, you know, I think some people complain about it because they're uncomfortable, and that's not what we need to do. So thank you for your efforts.
Absolutely.
Kim, looking at the numbers, they seem pretty straightforward. It looks like there's a veteran service agent for some part-time work, but other than that, it's pretty much level funded. And I will also send my thanks to Mark when I see him, but he's done an unbelievable job in that department. You can tell that his heart, and he's passionate, is there for the veterans, and that goes without saying. So I'm glad that he's getting some part-time help, because both that whole department that is there is working hard to try to work through the difficult times our veterans are having. So I will commend him and when I see him again. But thank
I'll let him know.
you for taking his place.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Moving along, the library, Ms. Luongo, page 78 and 79. Huh? Oh, did I? Oh. Okay. Huh? Yeah, no, we'll have him there. All right, my apologies.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to read like everyone else. My mission statement is to foster the intellectual and cultural life of the community of Revere by providing quality literature, media, programming, and access to technology to residents of all ages. Our accomplishments, been for programming and collections, it's been for providing an average of 25 hours a week of curbside services during the pandemic closure and enabling patrons to request and borrow library materials. We cataloged and added over 100 title collections, provided over 8,000 interlibrary loans and interactions, roughly 4,000 borrowing, 4,000 lending. Offered roughly 40 virtual programs during the pandemic closure, ranging from staff-directed to outsourced vendors for children's, teens, and adults, including a successful writing contest to engage our youth patrons. There's a list more. I'm going to move on to the physical, plant, and technology accomplishments. We successfully completed 2 major young adult initiatives, separated the young adult collection from the adult collection, created a space for just for the young adults in the underutilized attic space, and ran a successful writing contest for our young adults. Completed several maintenance projects in the building, including patching the roof to stop any leak and painting and plastering in the main reading area, and we cleaned out the attic spaces. Let's see, gathered quotes so far to redo the flooring in the main area, which was damaged from all the leaking in the roof. Increased public website accessibility and convenience of use by adding resources and services to the RPL website. Increased outreach marketing to patron by creating an email distribution list for revamped monthly newsletter and other marketing. Distributed 8 monthly newsletters issued to roughly 100 recipients, which is more at this point. Scheduled and completed Noble Network review of public computer resources to support upgrade recommendation. And I'll move on from that list because it still goes on. I just want to go over a few goals and objectives. The 2 goals that I have here are really important. It's to increase quality and quantity of services to patrons and public at large. The way to do that is to hire qualified library professionals and provide ongoing professional development opportunities. And the other goal is to reclassify staff positions to attract qualified professionals. The objective there is to engage with community officials and union representatives to ensure that employee job titles match their roles and the market value for each position. Another goal we have is to launch new young adult space and host monthly reading groups as part of our diversity community to feature ELL and LGBTQ specific programs, which have not been at the library in the past almost 9 years that I've been there. We haven't even had anything for the young adults in the community. So that's kind of the main priority right now. That's it.
Any questions from the subcommittee? Council McKenna.
Diana, I just want to know one thing. When do you host the monthly reading groups as a part of the diversity commitment to feature ELL and L?
So that's a goal.
Oh, it's a goal?
Yep.
Okay. So you haven't done that yet. Do you have like a plan of when you're going to?
So my plan was to hire a young adult librarian, and
Okay.
they would be responsible. At this point, it wasn't put in the budget. So instead, I'm going to try to outsource for that position as a contracted position using some of our grant money.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe I have no questions regarding the numbers, within your budget. So I want to congratulate you on the new position.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, my apologies, I missed Consumer Affairs, so if we can have Mr. Fitzmaurice to the podium. That is page 74 and 75.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. As every other department in the city, the Consumer Affairs Office continue to face challenges related to COVID-19. In addition to the types of complaints from consumers that we regularly receive, we continue to field an increase in complaints related to travel services that were paid for and were unable to be delivered due to COVID-19, such as weddings and function facilities that had taken deposits and were unable to deliver the services and were not in a position to refund the money to the consumers. We investigated complaints related to price gouging, retail establishments that arbitrarily changed their return policies after purchases were made. In anticipation of the eviction moratorium ending, we started to receive a large number of referrals from the Attorney General's office to assist residents who would be facing eviction. We worked with them to provide them with assistance filling out the forms for the various types of financial assistance that was available through RAFT and IRMA. We streamlined the mediation process, resulting in a significant decrease in the time that it takes to resolve a complaint. For the first time, we began to accept responses from the subjects of the complaints through email. Last year, our office relocated from the rear of the Parks and Recreation Building to the second floor of the Senior Center, and that has been a tremendous addition to our functions. We're close to the seniors who make up a large part of our constituency. We've increased the amount of postings we are doing on Facebook. Under the grant that we received from the Attorney General's office, we are required to do a fair amount of outreach activities, especially around Consumer Protection Week. Due to COVID-19, we were unable to do that, so I scheduled and was interviewed on 10 major radio stations in Greater Boston. In FY 2022, in addition to the 9 other municipalities that we serve as part of the Attorney General's Consumer Advocacy and Response Division, we'll be adding the city of Peabody and the towns of Lynnfield, Wakefield, Stoneham to our service area. And in FY 2021, to date, we mediated 367 complaints and returned $257,000 to the consumers in our service area.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Fitzmaurice. Any questions from the subcommittee? Sure. Council McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan, I just want to say thank you very much for what you do, but also I have to tell you how wonderful everybody thinks your voice is when you call and make those calls, you know, for, you know, whatever it is. Everybody's like, who is that? That's not the mayor, is it? And I'd say, no, that's Alan Fitzmyer. I said your name wrong, but anyways.
I spent an awful lot of money at Emerson College to learn how to read out loud.
Yes, I know you did. I know, we talked about this, but you have a wonderful voice, and it's a pleasure to hear you when we get the call from Revere, so thank you.
Thank you, Council McKenna. Councilor Janine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So although you may have missed your calling as a radio host, we're very happy to have you here in the city. Huh? You were?
You did. Oh, yeah. Prior to this, I was in broadcasting for over 30 years.
Well, that's another story we're going to have to talk about, but I'm very happy to have you here. But no, I think it's really important, and I had a case today, and that's what makes me think of it, but you protect some of our most vulnerable people, and that's our seniors. And I cannot tell you how many calls I receive from seniors that are being scammed, whether it be Verizon, or they think it's National Grid, or they think it's something for their benefits, and they're giving out personal information over the phone. And it's happening more frequently. I know the police department's aware of it. I know you're aware of it. And I just think this is a really important time for them to know, you know, never give out any personal information over the phone. No one of actual importance that's really, you know, looking to help you is ever going to ask you for things like your social security number, your bank account numbers, any of that information. And it's happening a lot more frequently in our city. And people that I know that I would never in a million years think would fall for it are falling for it. So these scams are getting more complex. So thank you for looking out for our seniors and all of our residents and making sure they're safe.
Great. Thank you.
Council President Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I have to say I'm really impressed. The numbers of funds you recovered for citizens from 2020. 136,000, 2021, 257,000. That's very impressive, and that's like my colleague said, that's really helping the people that are getting shafted. And so keep up the good work.
They are. We had a lot of what I would call a big hit. In some cases, $10,000, $15,000 we recovered. But I like to tell the story about when I first joined the office. One of the first cases I worked was a gentleman who was unable to return a pair of pants that he purchased at Sears. And the pants were only $26, but we were able to get the money back for him. But that $26 was a lot of money to him, and that made a difference to him that week.
It truly does make a difference, because usually the people that are getting scammed are the ones that can't afford to be scammed. So thank you for what you do, and keep up the good work, and you do have a terrific radio voice.
There are many program directors who didn't agree with that. So.
I stopped. When I was a kid, I went to broadcasting school, so I know what it's like not to be appreciated.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, Alan, it's great to see that you're doing a great job. I know that the amount of, or the areas that you cover now has increased as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct. We, in previous years, we had 12 cities in our service area. Last year, the Chelsea and Everett residents are now served by an office in Chelsea. Next year, we're adding, as I mentioned, Peabody, Linfield, Wakefield, and Stoneham to Lynn, Malden, Melrose, Salem, Marblehead, Nahant, Saugus, Swampscott, and Winthrop. And what that means is if the resident lives in that community or the business is located in that community, when the complaint is filed with the Attorney General's office, it is sent to our office for resolution. So in some cases, we've resolved issues for people who live out of state and have done business with a business, for example, in Malden.
And the fact that you're completely grant funded is great too. So I want to commend you on a great job that you're doing. Keep up the great work, and thank you again for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along. The big number in our budget is, I believe, Dr. Diane Kelly. The Superintendent of Schools. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. Councilmember Zambudo just mentioned that the school department budget is a little bit separated from the rest of the city budget in the sense that it's mandated by the state. And those are the numbers that we follow carefully as a district and as a city. But we're very thankful to the support that we have on the city council and from the mayor's office to help us run an effective school system. Of course, the school committee voted the budget that's before you tonight last week at their meeting. And you can see the details on the pages. As the other departments have done, I'll mention that our overarching goals are really driving the new funding. You'll see that there is a significant increase in our FY22 budget over the FY21 budget, and that was due to new legislation called the Student Opportunity Act, which Revere students will benefit from greatly. But I need to highlight that all of that increased funding is really just symbolic of the underfunding that the district has endured for years up until that law came into effect to really recognize the needs of students who live in poverty and students who have different learning needs or are English language learners. When all is said and done, our budget is about $10.5 million more this year than it was last year. It's going to have a huge impact on the district and on our students. And the majority of that spending is going in the areas that are identified as our strategic objectives, which are building an anti-racist community, promoting social and emotional health, and meeting the needs of all students. So through this budgeting process, we've been able to add a couple of administrative positions that are going to help the district function more effectively, including our first ever human resources director and a communications person who will be able to help us engage families and the community at a more effective level. I think that most importantly, we've been able to add over 70 teaching positions. And that includes 8 social workers and guidance counselors, 3 behavioral health analysts who can help us with students who need assistance self-regulating, 3 school psychologists, which is 3, we hired 1 last year. We're going to have 4 next year. We had 0 all the years before that. So I think these things are going to be game changers and really help us make sure the kids have what they need to be successful regardless of where they're coming from or what their educational status is in this moment. We can get them to where they need to be successful in life. If you look at the details of the budget, you'll see that the vast majority of the spending falls into those areas and will help us address the needs of our students.
Well, thank you. Any questions? Council McKenna?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel like I'm talking the whole time here. I just want to say that's wonderful that you've put all these people on, because I know the statistics are saying that these kids, because of COVID, they've suffered the most out of everybody. So I'm really happy to see that you're paying attention to their needs. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Council President Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Kelly, for coming tonight. And I've been up here many years, and I dare say that the superintendent has not been here a lot. So welcome to the City Council, and I know we have no say on how you spend your money. That was always a pet peeve of mine, but I never won that battle due to the law. But thank you for what you do, and thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you. And even, you know, money aside, we really do get a lot of help and support from the City Council, and we really do appreciate that.
Well, Dr. Kelly, I want to say thank you as well for coming. I know you, as well as my former colleagues on the school committee, have had their hands full this year through COVID, so it hasn't been easy, to say the least. And I want to commend you, as well as the school committee members, for fighting the fight. And we're getting through it. It's great to see that we're over the hump, and we're going to get back to some normalcy the next school year. So thank you again for coming. I have no say in your budget since I'm no longer on the school committee, so we'll leave that alone, and we're all good. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have Counselor Serino.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Dr. Kelly. Not a budget-related question, but a couple of Lincoln School teachers have asked, can we confirm that the air conditioning will be done over the summer, this summer going into the new school year?
And I'll defer to Councilor Zambudo again, who knows an awful lot about construction and how those projects can go. Our full expectation and anticipation is that the air conditioning will be fully working and operational when we return to school in August. I will put the caveat on that we know that construction projects often encounter unexpected delays, and so something unexpected could happen that might delay that, but our full anticipation is to have it done. The project is already underway. It started the day after students left, so.
If I might add,
Thank you.
I agree with Dr. Kelly, but this project, like most projects today, has been surveyed properly, and I fully expect it to be completed before the school starts.
Thank you. And I'll say that our facilities team is working very closely with the contractors. So when they are encountering any kind of an issue, our team will be there to assist and expedite whatever needs to be done so that we can try to stay on target.
Thank you again. Thank you. And I believe this concludes, this concludes the 2021 budget hearings for fiscal year 2022. Councilor Janino.
I just want to make a point of information, Mr. Chairman. You did a great job over the last 2 weeks holding these hearings, so thank you for organizing this so well and representing our city so well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Council President.
You know, I'm not finished throwing my bouquets.
What do you mean? They're coming to me now?
Yeah, well, I mean, you see, when I throw the bouquet at you, it shows my expertise in picking you to be chairman of Ways and Means. So, but all kidding aside, I had complete confidence in you, and you've showed everybody that you're the right person for this position. Thank you very much for serving.
Well, thank you for the compliments. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to getting through it. How's that? Thank you.